Does it bother you that the bags under your eyes make you look more tired than you really are? Eliminate under eye bags with this $2 oil in 12 hours. And at the end, I will tell you the mistakes that may be sabotaging all the benefits without you realizing it. Before we dive in, take a moment to subscribe this channel. Also tell me in the comments where you belong from. So let's begin. This type of oil for years has been used within homemade skincare routines. And when applied properly, it can help visibly improve the appearance of bags under the eyes while you sleep. And this is where it starts to become really interesting, because we are not talking about a superficial or isolated effect, but about support that acts at a key moment of the day. The night when the body enters its natural phase of repair, deep rest, and cellular regeneration. It is precisely during that period when the skin works more actively, and that is why this type of care makes sense within that time window. And here comes a detail that many people do not imagine. A single container can last several months because the amount needed for each use is very small. In fact, with just a few drops each night properly applied, it is enough to work on both areas of the face without saturating the skin or generating excess product. This is also key because the eye area does not need large amounts, but consistency and proper application, which makes the product last much longer than most people expect first. And this changes the way of seeing it because we are not talking about something expensive or complicated, but about a simple, economical, and easy habit to maintain over time. Now, here comes a point that almost nobody takes into account, and it is key to understanding all this. The effect of this oil occurs mainly during the night while you sleep, right at the moment when the body enters its natural phase of repair and regeneration. And it is there, precisely there, where everything starts to fit together. Because during those hours, the body is not turned off. On the contrary, it is working intensely on internal processes, tissue repair, fluid balance, and reorganization of cellular functions. And that is why any routine applied before sleeping has a much more important context than it seems at first glance. Because this product does not act on a single cause, but on 3 different factors that are behind under eye bags. And when you understand this, you completely change the way you see it, since it is not a single problem, but the sum of several processes at the same time that accumulate day after day, almost without you noticing it. The first of these factors is the accumulation of fluids under the eyes. This happens because during sleep, circulation becomes slower, and as a result, the natural drainage of fluids does not work as efficiently, so that fluid accumulates in the lower part of the eyelid in the softer tissue. And that is why, when you wake up, that typical swelling appears that many people recognize when looking at themselves in the mirror. And the important thing here is to understand that it is not something specific to a single night, but a repeated effect that keeps reinforcing over time when there is no good drainage or when rest is not completely restorative. The second factor is the weakness of the blood capillaries. Over time, these small vessels become more fragile and permeable, which means they can let small particles or natural pigments from the blood escape. And this, although it is microscopic and not seen immediately, over time does accumulate and becomes visible because it directly contributes to that appearance of dark circles, marked shadows, or even bluish tones under the eyes. And here is where another important detail comes in. This area has such thin skin that any small internal change is reflected much faster than in other parts of the face. And there is still a third point which is often overlooked: the loss of collagen. The skin around the eyes is much thinner than the rest of the face, and it also has less natural structural support. So when collagen decreases with age, the skin loses firmness, elasticity, and ability to recover. And as a consequence, the bags not only become more visible, but the area takes on a more weak appearance, more sunken, or with less natural tension. And this does not happen from one day to another, but progressively, almost silently, as part of the aging of the tissue itself. Say the word goodbye bags if you commit to taking care of your skin. Now then, this is where this oil comes into play. In this case, we are talking about olive oil, one of the most common and easy to obtain, present in practically any supermarket, and used for centuries, both in cooking and in traditional skincare routines. And what is interesting is precisely that. It is not a rare or specialized product, but something every day that you often have at home without giving it much importance because it contains natural compounds that help maintain skin hydration and reinforce its protective function. But that is not all, because when applied consistently and accompanied by a gentle massage, it can also stimulate microcirculation in the area. And this is important because that improvement in circulation helps the body itself eliminate accumulated fluids better during the night. As a result, little by little, the eye contour can begin to look lighter, less puffy upon waking, and with a more even texture. But be careful with this, because here is the most common mistake. Many people expect fast, almost immediate results, and that is where they are wrong, because this does not work like that. It is not speed, it is consistency. The skin does not respond to abrupt changes, but to gentle stimuli repeated day after day. And that repetition is what truly generates improvement over time. And something curious that few people know is that this type of simple care is not something new. In fact, olive oil has been used in traditional practices of different cultures for centuries, long before modern cosmetics existed. Today, eye contour care moves an enormous amount of money in creams, serums, and very complex treatments. Many of them promise fast results and use sophisticated and expensive formulas. But here comes what almost nobody says out loud. Most of the real improvement in this area does not depend on complicated products, but on basic things like hydration, circulation, and the natural maintenance of the skin. And when those factors are well supported, the area can gradually improve without the need for excessive routines. That is why olive oil still makes sense, not because it performs miracles or promises instant results, but because it works on real and fundamental processes that directly influence how under-eye bags look. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel if you want to keep learning more useful tips about the skin. And now we arrive at the most important part, how it is applied in practice. And this is key because no matter how good olive oil is, if it is used incorrectly, it simply is not taken advantage of as it should be, because this is where most people fail without realizing it. Not because of the product itself, but because of the way they apply it, or due to a lack of consistency. Every night after properly washing the face and leaving the skin completely clean, a minimal amount of olive oil is used, literally a single drop. And this is not an exaggeration. More product does not mean better results. On the contrary, it can saturate the area and make the skin not absorb it properly. The skin around the eyes is extremely thin, almost like a very delicate layer, which is why it does not need large amounts to work. That drop is placed on the ring finger, and this has a very simple but very important reason. It is the finger that naturally applies the least pressure. So it reduces as much as possible the risk of pressure, friction, or damage in such a sensitive area. From there comes the most important part of the whole process. It is not about rubbing, nor massaging forcefully, nor spreading it like a normal cream. In fact, that is exactly what must be avoided. The correct way is to make small, very gentle taps around the eye. Light movements, almost as if you were barely placing the product on the skin without pushing it, without dragging, without stretching, without generating tension. The idea is to fully respect the delicacy of the area. And here is a detail that makes the difference. The movement should follow the natural shape of the bone that surrounds the eye, starting from the inner part and moving toward the outer part, always in that direction. And this is not by chance, because that path follows the body's natural drainage flow during the night, when the organism is working to eliminate fluids and balance the area. And here's the key that changes everything. It is not just about applying oil, but about supporting a biological process that the body already performs while you sleep. It is like joining something that is already happening, not forcing it or replacing it. Over the days when this is done consistently, many people begin to notice subtle but clear changes. They are not exaggerated or instant transformations, but small details that gradually accumulate. For example, upon waking, the area looks less swollen, the gaze appears more rested, and the skin begins to feel slightly softer and more even to the touch. It is not a sudden change, it is a slow process but consistent. And this is essential to understand because this is not something that works from one day to another. It is not magic nor an immediate effect. It is a progressive process that depends entirely on daily repetition without interruptions. And precisely for that reason, many people abandon it because they do not see fast results like those promised by other more expensive or complex products. But that is where the mistake lies, comparing a biological process with an instant promise. In reality, this type of solution has existed for a very long time. It is just so simple that it is often underestimated. And when you understand this, everything starts to make more sense. Under-eye bags do not appear suddenly. They do not arise from a single bad day. They form little by little over time due to the accumulation of small factors that are constantly repeated. Fluids that are retained during the night, slower circulation while we sleep, and skin that over the years gradually loses firmness, elasticity, and ability to recover. It is not a single cause. It is several small things working at the same time. That is why it does not make sense to look for a quick solution that fixes everything immediately. The most logical and most realistic thing is to help the body do better what it already tries to do naturally during rest. And here is the real key. The skin around the eyes does not need aggressive or complicated treatments. It needs something much simpler. Gentle, consistent care without excess, because it is one of the most delicate areas of the human face, and it responds much better to light stimuli repeated every day than to intense treatments applied from time to time. Before continuing, tell me oil, if you will, start the treatment starting today, and that is where olive oil fits well into the nighttime routine. Not as something that performs miracles, but as support. Something that helps hydrate, slightly improve surface circulation, and keep the skin more flexible over time. When you use it for several consecutive days, you do not notice a radical change, but something more subtle. Less swelling upon waking, less tired appearance, and skin that little by little looks more even. And this is important to repeat. It is not magic. It is the body functioning better when you help it a little. Although today there are thousands of expensive creams and complicated treatments for this area, the reality is much simpler than it seems. The body basically needs three things: good circulation, less fluid retention, and well-hydrated skin. If that improves, the appearance also improves. That is why these types of basic solutions have continued to exist for so long in different cultures, not because they are special secrets, but because they work on the basics of the human body. And now, before finishing all this, there is something that almost nobody tells you, and that can make a huge difference in the results. The most common mistakes that most people make without realizing it when trying to improve under eye bags. Because the problem is not always the oil. Many times it is the way it is used, and also everything that surrounds it in the daily routine. The first mistake is using it on hot skin or skin that has just been exposed to very hot water. This not only can irritate the area, but it also alters the skin's natural barrier, causing it to retain hydration worse and preventing the product from settling properly. In many cases, this makes the effect much weaker without the person understanding why. The second mistake is applying it in a hurry without giving the process a few seconds. Most people do it quickly, almost automatically, as if it were any everyday cream, when in reality the eye contour area requires a more conscious, slower, and gentler gesture so that the product integrates properly. The third mistake is forgetting about the rest of the face. Many people focus only on the bags, but ignore factors such as overall skin hydration, level of rest, or even diet. And this is key because the eye contour does not function in isolation, but as part of a complete facial system. The fourth mistake is using it right before going to sleep and immediately lying face down or on the side over the treated area. That constant pressure during the night can promote fluid accumulation and reduce the effect of the previous massage, causing part of the work to be lost while you sleep. The fifth mistake is not respecting the sensitivity of the area during the day. Gestures such as rubbing the eyes, scratching, or applying pressure without realizing it can progressively weaken the skin even if you are doing the nighttime routine correctly. The sixth mistake is thinking that any oil works the same regardless of its condition. The reality is that factors such as oxidation, exposure to heat, or poor storage can alter its properties, causing it to lose part of its effectiveness without it being obvious at first glance. The seventh mistake is using it only when the problem is already visible as a reactive solution instead of incorporating it as a constant habit. In most cases, the skin responds much better when it is worked on preventatively and consistently over time. The eighth mistake is saturating the skin by combining it with too many products at the same time without respecting its natural absorption space. This can create a kind of blockage in the skin where everything stays on the surface without integrating well. The ninth mistake is constantly changing routines, trying a different method every few days. This prevents the skin from adapting to a single stimulus and breaks any progressive improvement process that is forming. And the 10th mistake is completely underestimating the impact of rest and sleeping posture. Sleeping few hours, sleeping poorly,